Hi there, welcome to podcast 90 from Football-Oranje, available on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, all the available places. I'm Michael Statham, I'm joined by Football-Oranje founder Mike Bell. We're going to be doing a generic podcast today talking about Dutch teams, the Eredivisie, the Netherlands, what we're looking forward to with the next squad in October. Just plenty of chit-chat about Dutch football. And of course, we're available in all those places so you can listen to us. We know we've been doing recently on YouTube some podcasty kind of things, but they've been mainly surrounding the Dutch national team and match reactions to those games. You can, of course, go and check those out if you wish. But this will be more about the Dutch clubs themselves and players to watch out for. Mike, how are you doing? And have you recovered from those national team games over the international break?
Yeah, I'm all good. And yeah, that Turkey win just got me more excited about the Netherlands national team at the moment. So it's still on a high from that. For the Eredivisie action at the weekend was a bit of a letdown after all the highs of Netherlands 6-1 Turkey. So yeah, it's good to have the Champions League back this week in the European games, all the Dutch teams in that. And yeah, it's only a month to go until even more Netherlands goodness. So yeah, it's going to be busy. Games come thick and fast with, European games this week, and then I think we've got a double header of Eredivisie next week with games during the midweek as well. So yeah, it's going to be busy, but it's got plenty of good games to look forward to.
There seems to be so many games at the moment. It's getting more for the Dutch national team and more for Dutch teams too, with the new Europa Conference League around. I think we should first of all talk about Ajax with their Champions League group. We touched upon their group to preview recently when they drew the teams out of the hat. But they've got Sporting Portugal, Dortmund, Besiktas in their group. Having watched Ajax more closely since the start of the season, well, what have you made of Ajax? And do you think now, do you look at that group and think that that's something they can contend with? Can they get through that group? Because for me, when I looked at the list of fixtures, of course, Sporting comes first. People might be listening to this after the Sporting match, but we might listen to this before then. And I look at that one, that away to Sporting, and think that is a key one for them to get through, even though Sporting were the top seed in that group. They've got to try and win games like that, or at least get a draw.
Yeah, if they want to get through, then for me, the away games against Sporting and Besiktas are the two ones that they got a chance of picking up wins in. And I think Sporting are actually missing some key players as well, which means the game's coming at a good time for Ajax. So, it's difficult with this Ajax side. I just sense there's not as much excitement around this Ajax group at the moment.
It's not as good. It seems to be a bit flat.
Yeah, everything's a bit flat around it. I think there's a few players that want to go elsewhere. I think there's a few distractions off the pitch, and just everything about his side isn't as exciting as it has been in the past couple of years. But saying that, the Champions League games are the ones they always pick themselves up for, and these are the ones that they want to showcase how good they are. But yeah, they're just a bit flat at the weekend. It's only Pek Zwolle who, touched on it before in the previews, but they're in for a horrible season, I think. And it's just a sort of lackluster win against them. And just thought, I'll got a couple of goals and I'll do. I thought Berghuis did well as a number 10. His link-up play with Haller was good. Other than that, it's just a few of their players just aren't performing as good as you expect, and there's just not that excitement around new signings that there usually is at this time of the year. I think that Darami's new players come in, but is he that exciting? Is he that good? Who knows? I know he didn't have a good time with Denmark during the international period, so the jury's out on him. But yeah, it's just going into this Champions League cycle, past couple of years, you've always had a lot of people getting excited about watching Ajax in the Champions League, but this year, I just sense it's a little bit different. But Sporting is a good chance to start with a win and maybe silence some of their critics. Whether they do that, we'll wait and see, because it's a dangerous tie. Lose that one straight off the bat, and it could be difficult. But anything but a loss is a good result. I think even a draw at this moment in time, I'd take if I was an Ajax fan.
We'll talk about some of the teams at the bottom of the Eredivisie a bit later. Go ahead, Hercules and Pek Zwolle, although that bottom three. You mentioned Pek, how dreadful they are, and Ajax only winning 2-0, I guess you could say, only. Was a bit disappointing. they've still got the likes of Dusan Tadic there, Deli Blint. There's a lot of experience, a lot of good quality players. And it's not as though someone like Tadic is playing any worse than he normally is. But there's not excitement around these new guys, like you said. Darami, is he as good as they're making out to be? We'll have to wait and see. I think the Champions League is where they want players like Anthony to perform so that they can either get through to the last 16, they can sell these players on for big money. Anthony, it's a big season for him. Someone like him, someone like Gravenberch, if they really want these big European moves, they have to impress in these 6 group games to get the team through, and obviously keep impressing in those knockout games and get big money moves. I still don't know what I think about Haller. I think I'm still on the fence where I think he's a good player and I think he's someone who will do something in the Champions League. I know there's people who listen to this that will completely disagree with me, that Haller is a limited striker. Berghuis as a 10 is interesting in place of Davy Klaassen. He did a good job against Pep because he likes the ball on the floor. He likes linking up with the striker. It's not average, is it, this Ajax team? But I think they're still on this hangover from when De Ligt and De Jong left.
Yeah, and there is a talent there. You got Timber at the back, you got Rensch, you've got Gravenberch. But Gravenberch, as everyone thinks he's an elite midfielder and he's going to be absolutely world class, but I just think he's going through a little bit of a dip in form recently. That's why we didn't see him for the Netherlands. Other than I think he got 10, 15 minutes maybe. That's because he's not actually playing that well for Ajax at the moment. And even times the last season, he was getting a bit criticised for not playing well, and he needs to step it up if he wants to become that midfielder that everyone expects him to be. He gets linked to Paul Pogba all the time, and talk about him being out of form. He's a world-class midfielder, and he needs to start showing it now.
Why is that then? Why is he not performing to what level they expect him to? Do we just have these expectations that are impossible for like an 18-year-old to reach? Is it that he's suggesting it might be an attitude thing where he's not pushing himself to be the best he can be? What is it? Or is it like any other young player where they have to go in waves to actually get better?
Yeah, I think he's like every other young player. I've not really seen anything about his attitude to say that he's not the next Bazur, for example. He's not going to do that. But yeah, I think he's a good professional, and he just needs to get out of slump. A couple of goals would help him. A couple of good games. A showing against Sporting in midweek would be great. If he could do that, then just create the buzz around him again, because he must be a confidence player that, once he starts getting his name in the lights, he'll start performing again. But just at the moment, there's a wall around most of the players at Ajax. Berghuis did well at the weekend. I still think Haller is going to finish top goal scorer in the Eredivisie. I said before, because he'll score in the games against Pixel and games like that, because he'll get the game time when Ten Hag decides to rotate during Champions League matches. Whether he starts against Sporting, I still don't think so. I think it'll be Tadic for the middle, possibly Anthony on the left, and Berghuis if Klaassen's back. If Klaassen's not back, then you might see Neres as well in there. But yeah, it's hard to speak about this Ajax side, because they are strong on paper, their squad's great, but I'm just not excited about this Ajax side at the moment. And
what even is their best 11? I think that's the problem they have. They've got some good players, but apart from like Haller and maybe one or two other players, you couldn't pick their starting 11 that you think will play every week in the Champions League.
Yeah, and I think they have issues in goal. I don't think that Stick Ellenberg was injured at the weekend, wasn't he? And then you got Pasveer, who is untested at this level. He's not a Champions League tested goalkeeper, so that could be a bit of a worry. Then I think Mazraoui's had a good start to the season, and then the Argentinians missed the game at the weekend because they got back late, but they'll come back into it. So yeah, Ten Hag has a selection choices to make, whether he goes with Tadic for the middle, Haller for the middle, or he gives some of the new guys a run out, whether he goes. You just need to. Yeah, I don't even know what to say what this Ajax side is because, as I said, I'm just very flat about them at the moment. And maybe they'll go out and they'll absolutely hammer Sporting 4-0, and I'll be like, wow, that was great. But right now, I just can't see it. And I don't know if the way to get out of this slump would be to give a couple of the young guys a chance. You know, like Bobby wants to see more of Kenneth Taylor, but he seems to be getting held back. But yeah, I still think they're going to get out of this group. I still think they'll come in the top two. I think at home they'll do well, and I think they'll pick up points. Away, I think they'll pick up at least 1 point against Sporting, and then 1 point against Besiktas, and then the games against Dortmund are going to be the ones that really tell. But yeah, I think I'm just waiting for Ajax to perform this season before I can see how really good they are, because you know we've got PSV, who for me on paper right now are a much more exciting side, and then you've got Feyenoord as well, who under Slot seem to be a very interesting project.
Let's talk about PSV anyway. They've got a Europa League group with Real Sociedad, Sturm Graz, and Monaco. That's a tough group, and I think that's the kind of motivation the players need. They want to play again in the Champions League, really. But there's two teams that I don't think would be out of place if they were in the Champions League in that group. And I know that you're excited about the players in that squad. Noni Madueke has gone through a bit of a dip recently, but we were just speaking about young players. They do that. They're not going to always fly. And they like to use the squad. Roger Schmidt did it a bit last season, but more so this season. He keeps saying it that to achieve something special, you have to use your entire squad. We've got players like Bruma and Ritsu Doan playing now. Ryan Thomas is getting minutes. They need to use all the players that they've collected over the past few years and probably can't get rid of to actually make a success of the season. What gets me, though, is when he changes players at half-time or after 60 minutes, because you're playing half the game or around about half the game without your best 11. And if you've got 5 players that aren't your best 11 playing, unless you're 3 or 4-0 up, it seems a bit counterproductive for me. Why don't you just start with those players?
Yeah. I think he was vindicated the weekend because, you know, AZ were on top at times. They're only 1-0 up, and then he made all the changes, and then suddenly Vertessen scores and Doan gets the third. So it worked.
It worked for him then, didn't it?
Yeah. And substitutions like that will give some of the players a bit up the arse as well. So if Madueke's not having a good game, if he gets dragged off, then he's going to come back into it thinking, no, then I'll need to impress, because Bruma's hot on his heels. You know, he's just won Eredivisie Player of the Month. He's got Doan coming in, scoring a great goal. You got Vertessen pushing, and then you've got Vinicius as well coming into. He's not even coming to the starting 11 yet. So where's he going to fit in? Is he just going to be a battler for Zahavi, or is he going to be maybe 2 up front? We'll need to see what Schmidt decides with him. But now Schmidt has options. He's using the bench, and he's using the bench well. And the more these players come in and do the business like Bruma or Doan, then they're going to push for a starting 11. And it's going to push somebody like Madueke out if he doesn't start performing. And that'll give him the incentive to not have dips, and then only make him a better player. The more competition they have, the better the starting 11 is going to be. So I think PSV have the options on the bench now. They've got plenty of attacking players to come in and change games. And if I was a PSV fan right now, I'd be very happy with the start of the season.
4 wins out of 4, and they beat RZ at the weekend. It showed us again the difference between PSV and RZ this season with the levels they're going to be operating at. What did you make of PSV in that game? I thought that they played very well, but RZ also, whilst being quite energetic, didn't really have the quality to finish chances against PSV. It was PSV's first win, though, against a top 4 team since 2018. In fact, they've only beaten one team from the top 5 over the past few years, and that was Vitesse, and that was just a home victory. They actually lost the away match last season. It's a big step up for Schmidt to do. I said at the start of the season that if they can beat the teams that will be up there with them, I guess you could count RZ still in that bracket, still a good side, then they're going to be able to win the league. What impressed you the most in that win? It's 3-0 against RZ. You know, that makes a statement, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that Schmidt's brought in Obispo. I think he's having a great start to the season alongside Romano. I think that those two in defence are great. I think Boscagli going into midfield to cover for the loss of Sangare as well. It just shows you what options that Schmidt has, and they're all performing well. I think even Obispo's now getting pushed forward for possibly getting a Netherlands call-up. That's how good a start season he's had so far. And I think defensively they were sound. AZ did have the chances they couldn't take. Probably talk about AZ a bit more later on, but I thought PSV were professional. They got the job done, and then Schmidt's substitutions changed the game in the second half. So I think it's as much as I was critical about Schmidt last season, he's sort of proven me a bit wrong this year because he's having a great start to the season. I think he's done wonders with his side, and yeah, I think that winning 3-0 at AZ is not an easy task, and
No.
4 wins out of 4, and then they've got Feyenoord this weekend as well. So if they win that one, then PSV are on a roll, and they're sort of justifying everyone's excitement at the start of the season.
And your prediction of them winning the league looks very good right now, this second.
Yeah.
You spoke about RZ. They finally, for me, are beginning to settle upon a starting 11. They've got the new goalkeeper in, Vindal Jensen. Just thinking on top of my head here, their starting lineup. They've got Martin Zindi sort of settled now as their main centre back. Timo Lecce, for me, has to come out of that side. They need to have a better defender next to Martin Zindi. But Martin Zindi didn't cover himself in glory for, I think it was PSV's second or third goal, where the test just ran around him. They've got their fullback sorted. Midfield looks strong still with Mizio in there. But then it's the front four that interest me the most when it comes to how they could improve the team. Coulson has to be their main attacking threat this season from the left. And it seems like Abbott Clow is going to be their starting right winger. Danny DeVitt is playing behind Pavlidis now. We also said before, we don't repeat what we said before, that this side, if it was a team that finished 6th, 7th, or 8th that season, you'd be saying, wow, they'll be ready to push on now, looking at the top 6 or whatever. That's where they find themselves. They're going to be in that bracket this season of fighting for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. They're not going to be 3rd, 2nd, or challenging for the title. Is it something that RZ fans have just got to accept? And people that watch Dutch football, have they got to accept that this is where RZ are and that they will be back? Or is there potential here that maybe we haven't realised yet, and they have got a long way to go still this season?
No, I don't think that this side's going to be a surprise and then end up top 3. I just don't think there's enough about them. I don't think there's enough depth up front. I don't think there's enough goals in this side to really challenge for the top 3. I think other Ajax, PSV, and Feyenoord are much stronger than this AZ side, and it's a shame because we've loved AZ over the past few years, challenging at the top to be a great story. But I think this year is a transitional year. I think they've got the money in. They could have signed players, decided not to. They said they wanted to bring in some of the youth players. They started doing that to an extent with Poku getting a chance here and there. I think they need to do it more. I think Tabuni needs to come into it, get a feel of the game. I think Bukima has to come in as well. I think he's a better centre-back than Lecce. I think Hadzidiakos is a better centre-back than Lecce, but he seems to be the starter at the moment, which is a bit odd. But I just think that AZ had a chance to sign some players in the summer and he decided against it, and that's what's going to be telling, that they didn't go out and get a couple of players. Maybe in January they'll go out and spend the money that they could have spent in the summer. Maybe Joey Veerman will be a bit cheaper in January than it would have been in the summer, or maybe they'll get another striker in January to challenge Pavlidis, because if Pavlidis gets injured, you're looking at maybe Danny DeVitt starting up front and then Gudmundsson coming into the side, and then I don't think that really improves it much. So I think they're still missing 2 or 3 players to challenge at the top. And I think that their goalkeeper, I was looking at it at the weekend, and as much as Buscagli's strike was absolutely outstanding, the more I watched it, the more I was like,
what was the keeper doing? He just stood there, didn't he, really?
He stood there and watched it go in, and I was just like, if he dove for that, sure he would have saved it. So there's still reservations about him. So, and it just depends on how motivated Owen Wijndal is. He's got the captain's armband. He says he's more than happy to stay at AZ this season. So we need to see what kind of campaign he has on the left, because he's their star man now. He's a big name. I think right now we'll see how they're at in January. But say after like 6th, 7th in January, the club's fans are going to be expecting them to go out and spend to move them up that table. And I think that I'll keep repeating it, that Joey Veerman for 8 million, speculate to accumulate. If he joins AZ, does very well, he then becomes a sort
20, 25 million pound player.
Exactly. So why not spend I think they only bid 4.5 million from. Why not at least go to 6 to 7? That's not extremely outrageous given the amount of money that AZ brought in this summer. And he's a player that would have improved that midfield as soon as Koopmeiners left. And Jordy Classy is just not the same type of player at all. And you've already seen so far this season that Joey Veerman's been the standout for Heerenveen, who are having a good start so far. And yeah, I just don't get it. I just don't get why they wouldn't just put the money on the table for him. But they didn't, and they've got this squad till January, and we just need to see where they're at by then. But I can see this AZ side being at least 5th to 6th by the time that January rolls around.
Hopefully they put some effort into the Europe. Their form in the Europa Conference League is going to help the Netherlands in general. We do speak about the coefficient occasionally on this podcast. Yeah, I like Jordy Classy. I really want him to rediscover his form from final days. He was brilliant then. But it isn't the same at AZ. It's like it doesn't work for him there. It's almost like the crowd isn't as big as finals. He just doesn't get up for matches quite so much. And yeah, Veerman, I agree with you. He should have gone for that money. AZ have got so much money now, and they can't be putting all that back into the youth academy. If they're saving that money for a player, then who are they waiting for? They can't tell me because of COVID and the roof collapsing, they need all of that money to spend. There must be some reserves. Yeah, and I heard as well that the bid that AZ put in for Veerman was less than the bid they put in earlier in the summer. Heerenveen were not going to be selling him for less than they'd already rejected him for. Let's speak about that club, though. The Frisians, Heerenveen, they've had a great start to the season. And some people are starting to tip them as one of the teams that could surprise this season. I'm not trying to get too ahead of myself. I still think there's a couple of players in there that aren't worthy of Europa League qualification and whatnot. But they could be considered up there with the likes of AZ Vitesse this season. They've got teams ahead of them that are playing in Europe. They're going to have games to play, get tired. They're going to drop points. Heerenveen don't have that problem. And they've got some very useful players. And the club policy is to buy players that aren't necessarily quite so young. And the experience does count in certain situations. We've got some interesting loan players in, some good young players. And added to the quality they've already got, and the fact they've kept Joey Veerman, what a team they seem to be assembling. They can go out and win games they weren't expected to. In the Derby of the North at the weekend, they were by far away the best team by half time. Groningen came back into the second half, but Groningen are always a tough team to play away from home. And I think they handled themselves very well, Heerenveen. They could beat. Thinking at home here, they could match and challenge Ajax, PSV, and they can win against the smaller teams away from home. Those points are what's going to make a difference between them being mid-table and being in the top 4, 5, etc.
Yeah, I think the business they did this summer was very smart. I think Van Uyck from ADO Den Haag was a great signing, getting him in so early. Then keeping Joey Veerman's the best business that they could have done this summer, and they somehow managed it. Van Bergen's gone, but I think that they've replaced him well. And I think Musaba is going to be a great signing once he actually gets into the side. From what I saw at him at NAC, I thought he was great. And he earned that move to Monaco, so it's going to be exciting to actually see him, what he can do in the Eredivisie. And I think in terms of having a striker with Henk Veerman who can score goals at this level, so I think all over the pitch they're strong and they've got good players. And yeah, I agree they can challenge for a European playoff spot, no problem this season. I think that's compared to what they were last year, where there was a bit of a shambles. I think it's going to be a much better season for them. And I think there's a few clubs that from last season are going on an upward trajectory, and there's some from last season that are going on a downward trajectory, like Groningen. But yeah, I think Heerenveen will be one of the teams that can definitely finish in top 7.
I felt generally that the Eredivisie has strengthened this season. It feels like a lot of the teams have got better players or just like held on to a couple of people, and it seems to be making a difference. One of the teams that came up from the Eredivisie playoffs was NEC Nijmegen. We both tipped them to do all right this season, you more so than me, but we both thought they'd do all right. And what a start. 7 points from 4 games. Should have actually beat Willem II at the weekend to make it 3 wins in a row. There's surely no danger of them getting relegated. And Ali Akman, even as a teenager, what a striker.
Yeah, I think that coming into the season, I was very excited about the young talents that they had. And Ali Akman was one I didn't have any clue about. Yeah, I wouldn't have named him before the start of the season, but what a revelation he's been so far, and he looks a great talent. I think Dirk Proper has done well in midfield. I think he got man of the match at the weekend as well. So they've got the youngsters who are proving themselves, and they've got the experience of players like Shona as well in midfield. And I just think they're a well balanced side. I think that they lost big against Ajax on the first day of the season, but there's no disrespect in that. And I think that when it comes up against the sides that are around them, they've got a little bit more quality. And I think that they'll stay up no problem this year. And it's just how far they can go. I think they'll be comfortably mid-table, and some of these young players will be impressed in the definitely top half of the Eredivisie for sure.
And old Ajax man Lasse Schöne, who's doing a good job there so far too. A great experienced addition in midfield. Another new promoted team who are doing less well. Go Ahead Eagles. They knew it was going to be a tough challenge this season, but it doesn't look great for them. They don't seem to have the goals to be able to do it. And if the defensive side goes out the window for a team like Go Ahead Eagles, who prided themselves on their defensive work last season, losing Berkema and Jay Horter, the goalkeeper and defender from last season, that's not going to help either. I'm worried for them, even with Keaton Vundalen as manager, who I think is a good manager. Doesn't look good.
Yeah, I think that what you can say at the weekend is that took the lead, and then as soon as Canberra scored 1 and 2, they just absolutely crumbled and their defence fell apart. So for a team that was, as you say, prided themselves on their defence last year, it looked a bit of a shambles at the weekend. And I think that some teams are going to get a lot of joy against Go Ahead Eagles this season. I think they'll be on the end of a couple of rations.
And a lot of their players as well are still from when they were in the second tier, which NEC Nijmegen have tried to improve. Canberra won the league by far and away, so they can compete with almost what they had last season. We haven't seen a lot of Heracles Almelo this season, but they're also in the bottom 3. I think they'll be absolutely fine, especially keeping Rave Lutz. I think that went completely under the radar, but he didn't get a move higher at the league or abroad. And Pek Zwolle, we mentioned them earlier, rooted to the bottom, 4 defeats and 4. I feel really, really good about putting them bottom of the table now. It's not against Pet themselves. I'm sorry if there's any Pet supporters watching. They're so low in quality, and they've got no players to replace anyone if they're injured. It's just a bunch of youth players on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the weekend they didn't even fill their bench because they don't have enough players to even get enough on the bench. And then I'd like to see him do well because Daishan Radon's gone there. I'd like to see him actually fulfill some of his potential, but it's going to be a tough one to really showcase his talents at Pek Zwolle this season because they're in for a bad year. I think they lack quality all over the pitch, especially midfield and defence. And when they're relying on players like Brav Vandenberg, he's only 16, 17, that tells you just how bad it is. And I think that them being rooted to the bottom is predictable, and I think that's probably be around about there was where they're going to end up. Maybe they'll climb up a couple of places. That'll be between them, Go Ahead Eagles, maybe at the bottom. But it's going to be a tough year for them, judging by the start of the season they've had.
I just want to touch quickly upon RKC Waalwijk, a team that I think will be completely fine. And another one I didn't really want to let slip under the radar. Joseph Oosting, the old Vitesse coach, is their manager now. I think he's done a great job considering what Fred Grim's done for them and gone on to do with Willem II. Look okay now. Ekese, an inexperienced manager. He's brought a few decent players in to help the squads. I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think they've got enough experience in that squad and enough know how to finish high up the table. I think that they've got the experience of Kramer up front, who seems to be in better form than what he was at Adel Den Haag. Then they've got Alexander Butner's in there. He's getting game time. He's doing right. You got Vernon and Anita in there as well. So they've got the players to keep them away from the bottom two, and I think they'll be all right. I think they gave Vitesse a good game at the weekend, so yeah, to keep that up, then they should be totally fine.
I just want to touch before we finish the podcast, Mike, about the Netherlands squad that's coming up in October. It's not far away again. Who are you looking for in the Eredivisie to impress? Is there anyone who's in the squad that you think needs to be made more prominent? Or is there anyone in the Eredivisie you think could get the first call up soon? The reason why I'm asking is because we mentioned this in the match reactions that we did on YouTube, that Latvia and Gibraltar games are coming up. That is a chance to try out some new players, isn't it?
True. Again, you get the argument of you don't get very many internationals, so can you really afford to try out loads of new players when you needed that team to gel? So I don't think Van Gaal is going to go crazy with bringing up a bunch of new players for these two games. I think it'll be much the same. I think that players like Obispo, if he keeps playing well, he might come into it. But around the rest there, there's you're looking at who could really maybe step up. Geertruida's coming back at Feyenoord. If he can replicate some of the form that he showed last season, maybe he can come into contention. But yeah, the defence of the Netherlands is so strong that maybe he won't be able to come in there. And it's hard to pick players right now that are going to sneak in there, because I don't think he's going to pick players that play for a Heerenveen or even an AZ at the moment. Other than Vinder, looking at that squad there's no players I'm going to be like, yeah, he's going to be a chance for Netherlands. This is not that quality. So you're looking at players abroad. Noah Lang, as we've mentioned constantly, he scored an absolute wonderful goal for Club Brugge at the weekend. So he's the one that has a chance to come into the squad. But if it's from the Eredivisie, I'd pick Obispo if there was going to be one. But even then, centre-back options for the Netherlands, there's just so many. So it's hard to get picked up there. And we'll see who else can make the impression in the next couple of weeks, because I don't think Donny van de Beek's situation is really changing at Manchester United. No.
What about Rick Karsdorp, though? Because he's someone that people have commented to us before saying that he's someone that needs to be included, someone to be an offensive right back. Or are you happy with Dumfries and someone to back him up?
I think Dumfries is undoubtedly number one, and it's just who comes in there. Rensch, I think, did very well when he came on against Turkey. I thought, like that 6 goal he set up, he did very well with his little touch inside. He's not done himself any disharm with that performance, but he needs to break into the Ajax side full time and actually start playing more regularly, because I think Karsdorp right now is doing really well at Roma, and he's part of a good side. They're playing well. He's doing well. So he's one that definitely should come into contention. He should have came in contention last season as well, but he just didn't. And elsewhere, you're looking at Sam Lammers is now starting striker at Frankfurt. If he starts playing well, maybe he becomes an option, an alternative to Weghorst. Then you've got Leverkusen, an interesting side. They're not very good defensively. They conceded 4 against Dortmund, but Frimpong and Bakker are starters there, so that's another interesting side for the Netherlands. And yeah, you got the French contingent as well. I think that Matasiwa had a good debut for Stade Reims, and I don't think he comes into the Netherlands contention yet, but the more he plays well, then who knows. And then you're looking at the Nice boys, and it's a bit worrying for me that Calvin Stengs was played as a left midfielder at the weekend, and judging by his stats from the game, he did not have any joy. I think he attempted 3 dribbles, won none of them, misplaced a lot of passes.
That's really not good. And when I spoke to someone who was a French football expert recently, they asked me, I said, well, would Stengs fit into a 4-4-2 system in France? And I said, well, we'd have to learn a lot of parts of his game, because it's not something that he normally does. He normally plays on the right side or as a 10. And they said, "Oh, maybe he'll play as a striker then, because otherwise, he's going to have to play on wide midfield." And that is true. He's played left midfield.
Yeah, and it didn't go very well, judging by the weekend, and he was taken off. And then you've got Van Bergen playing as a striker for Stade Reims as well. So it's straight up. Justin Kluivert wasn't there at the weekend. Dilrosun did all right for Bordeaux apparently when he came on, so that's a good move for him. But yeah, we just need to see what players come in, and now we really want to see what Hatchering can do in Serie A, but he didn't get any game time at the weekend. So either did Harui either. So we need to see if that's a good move for him, and hopefully that Coop Miners was just given a slow start because he just joined up with the squad and he only got 5 minutes at the weekend, but hopefully he comes into it more in the next few weeks. But yeah, right now it's not looking very good for Dutchmen abroad, especially when you look at Brian Brobby, who when RB Leipzig were getting absolutely hammered by Munich, he was rooted to the bench when he could be the starting striker for Ajax. So yes, we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. It's still early doors in the season. There's still got plenty of time to go, and hopefully some of these players get game time.
You never know, you might be loaned back to Ajax in January. Stranger things have happened. I think we need to finish today, Mike, but I hope everyone enjoyed podcast 90 from Football-Oranje. If you did enjoy it, give us a like. If you're listening on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, give us a like, give us a review, subscribe. Wherever you are, let us know that you're there and you're enjoying the podcasts. There's much more to look forward to. If you don't normally go and visit it, go and see the Football-Oranje website. Always things on there. We're your home of Dutch football in English language. Couple of things also, if you enjoy what we do in terms of our podcast creation or our club content that we do on the website, then please vote for us in the Football Content Awards. There's still a link I've left in the description for you to click. And if you hadn't heard about this already, we've been nominated for 2 awards in the finals of the Football Content Awards. We're obviously very, very pleased about that. And finally, a little plug that we hopefully will be able to share with you an exclusive interview with Nigel Lonvijk, who is a Wolves defender who's on loan with Fortuna Sittard this season. You've got that to look forward to. You can find that on the website when it comes out. Mike, thanks for joining me, and more to come from us very soon. I think that there's a lot of matches coming up. I think it's going to be hard to keep track of all the games, whether that's in Europe, the Eredivisie, or the national team. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of game time, but it's an exciting time to be a Netherlands fan again with Van Gaal back in charge and the good times showing themselves again. So yeah, it's good to be around Netherlands when Netherlands are playing well, and then you got players coming through, and there's so many around Europe now to keep an eye on to see how they're doing every weekend. It's good to see. So yeah, there's a lot of games coming up, but a lot of interesting stories around Europe when involving Dutch players. So yeah, it's a lot to keep us busy on the website for sure. As always, well, thanks everyone for listening. Give us a like, and we'll see you very soon.